I pray that God will bless you in everything that you do. I pray that you will grow intellectually so that you can understand the problems of the world and where you fit into in that world picture.
Sun vibrates, earth revolves, how can I rise? If I perceive through a calcified third eye, Merkaba's looking like paper mache today, and words of wisdom from ancestors are now cliche, blowing like dust away, or metal rust away, doing wrong unto others and got enough to say. We shackled our slaves, now we wear cuffs today. Wanna make your wife a dyke? You go trust the gay. I am sheep punchlines, may Douglas bust the sway. Knitted times if crochet or custom made, RBG or RG, it's still MST. Getting guards off riddling and pill stamped with E. I go, I made. Youths chant with me on the front lines, and I got no grant with me. All diamonds are bloody, rapping blood clot dummy. Thinking that's real Imhotep playing a movie mummy. Give up a car doll and call it an Oscar, calling me grouch when I drop the truth on you. Use hip-hop to wake those you call young goats at risk, cause they done told and inhale gun smoke. Mufti shoot, nah, get a neck thumb poke. Trying to order me on the 9 to 5 like a slave boat. Master gets nailed to walls like plaster or gyp rock. Illegal tackle in battle or catch a hip block.
And I pray that all the fear that has ever been in your heart will be taken out. And when you look at that man, if you know he's nothing but a coward, you won't fear him. If he wasn't a coward, he wouldn't gang up on you. That's how they function. They function in miles. That's a coward. They put on a sheet so you won't know who they are. That's a coward. Now, the time will come when that sheet will be ripped off.
You're scared to say don't touch my ass, you b-boy cowards. Try that with me, ball in your face like 48 hours. Bloody your nose, maybe bloody your clothes. Kick Satan's ass in Eden's garden and bloody your rose. Bloody your spit, I'm just like bronchitis severe. Hex Alpha Omega, I'll make blood of your tears. Not on the Mike Tyson style, but I'll bloody your ears. Verbal shotgun blast you and your fam, bloody your peers. Some Pan-Africans ask why they bloody the feds. I say trail of tears is when they bloodied my fez. Without inspection, I see fiction correction. Too much diction and not enough soul reflection. Agents causing confusion from misconceptions. Distractions make lunch drops like turns missed on sessions. File for possessions. I burn up your Wessons. Smith cashing in the bonds, quick to live off pensions. Live off our tensions. I got to mention. Give Moore's European names and live off our inventions. Saying I'm black to cash in on bond investments. Saying I'm a Moor, you giving me psycho assessments.
And I pray that all the fear that has ever been in your heart will be taken out. And when you look at that man, if you know he's nothing but a coward, you won't fear him. If he wasn't a coward, he wouldn't gang up on you. That's how they function. They function in miles. That's a coward. They put on a sheet so you won't know who they are. That's a coward. Now, the time will come when that sheet will be ripped off.
Like lipo, hybrids getting under my skin. Boot stomp them like an insect, but not on the tins. I'm into tinted windows, but not into rims. Pilgrim stole my fez and just added a brim. Stole the tassel, convince you that's a degree. Thinking you're smart with 1 out of 360. Thinking you're hot, but run for nursery and curse me. Cause I run your fried chicken and your beef jerky. Run out your pork rinds, discharge court fines. Bondless, send a letter, make them acquiesce. Run the racket, racketeers with muskets modernized. Most lost their first and use modern eyes. Using words that makes language modified. Children's ain't stealing children, make them traumatized. Homos are doing promos and advertise. To the lesbian solo with gay chat lines. MySpace is really their space. Facebook is bait. Locks and pics but bald-headed, proving you're fake. Saying they're for love, but just want to debate their unintelligence and their lack of knowledge intake.
And I pray that all the fear that has ever been in your heart will be taken out. And when you look at that man, if you know he's nothing but a coward, you won't fear him. If he wasn't a coward, he wouldn't gang up on you. That's how they function. They function in miles. That's a coward. They put on a sheet so you won't know who they are. That's a coward. Now, the time will come when that sheet will be ripped off.
And conscious means that you're conscious of what's going on in this world. You're fully aware and awake to what's going on in the world. That's what conscious rap means. So if you got conscious rap, that means you got unconscious rap. That means you got motherfuckers that's unconscious rapping. That means they sleeping. They still under the spell of Leviathan. They still under the spell of Kingdom.
Call me brother man, I'm not the rubber man. Though I keep my Nazis in affairs wrapped with some rubber bands. Bunning out the Ku Klux Klan and Wizard Grand, Dairy Queen misters. Just butts of guns I'm giving. Trying to make more sovereign citizens, these minions. Help kill your prophet, stole your treasury millions. You heard it from your brother man, now the smother sellout. Sets links in K2 Kush days, keep me red out. I got the knowledge to make these silly hoes question the pimping directors of music videos. Gaylords and persons with strap-on boots with heels. Too much graphic art faces, boobs are not real. Since MCM and Troop, they use Timberland boots to get us all caught up in fashion, not the simple men roots. Got our people on dogmatic, not metaphysic. Exoteric, not esoteric is how you missed it. So out of it you couldn't feel the natural mystic blowing through the air like it didn't give a shit. I hear the dirty Moors dissing, cause I said profanities. A lot of these grand sheets need to take off the panties. Pull the thong out your crack vest wearing sash ass nigga. Return to where the prophet found you, Negro, ass nigga.
It's time to choose a side. You either positive or you negative. You either evil or you good. You understand what I'm saying? Choose a side, nigga. I know what side I'm on.
I threw a Molotov at the priest that works for the beast. All they want is our people to rest in peace. No attention of allowing more stress to ease. Cracker won't go home to spread himself the disease. Genocidal epidemic kill us in high proportion. Instead of mummified, we stay boxed in coffins. Mayors attend funerals for PR purposes. Where's the police escort? He replied with nervousness. He said, I don't have those numbers or connections to have Metro Police lead your friend's funeral procession. That's coming from Mr. Mayor, black community player, no question in the hoods dropping off boxes of weapons. Then blame black on black crime or natural causes. Plus those doctors aren't out on point but off a bit. Natural mystics prove they're not holistic. Hypocrite oaths make your children autistic.
I'm at the point now where I'm saying I'm tired of mixing the medicine with the food. I'm tired of playing that game. Now I'm shoving straight medicine down your fucking throat, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Straight doses of medicine is getting shoved down your throat. I don't give a fuck if it turns you off or not. Because if it do turn you off, then you're a stupid, ignorant motherfucker. You know what I'm saying?
Don't judge like a cover of your favorite book. Visit you in your dreams, hand with the hook. Paralysis overtook, so shook. Stop, look, listen with precision. MC on the mission, vision. Past senses and endless. Cypher with active Moors, beat you with facts senseless. Have your mind defenseless when the truth enters. Outglow reminds me of Omar Bay, Algonquin embers. Tap your pioneer out what some man remembers. All the lies told to your mind dismembered. Circle broken into quadrants, you the seven in the center. Compass G between the square. Baphomet of Templars, Warlock. Call on my witch mothers to maim them. The same wise spirits burned at stakes in Salem. Torture with vagina pair, survive bobbing for apples. Contort thumb, slide wrist out, tight shackles.
I always got something deep to say. Every time around. I always got something deep to say. Every time around. I always got something deep to say. Every time around. I always got something deep to say. Every time around.
It's love, boys. Well, you already know how it goes. And there's always an opportunity to put people on game. And there's a lot of playing around out here. So we switched over to Canaanland Mars 2 just to give a break to the original channel. Because there's a lot of snitches out here for the people, but they're gonna go cry to YouTube because you uploaded their video that's spreading knowledge, which they should be for that. Why would you not be for spreading knowledge? Why would you? But yeah. So we're over here now, for now. We're gonna start off with these American Indians, who don't want to be Moors. They don't want to be Moors, but they're American Indians. But now, just to set the stage, before they start with their whatever, we just want to set the stage so you can see why we tell you about King Alfred Plan, and we tell you that it's paid and unpaid agents, because you're dealing with energy. You're dealing with people on a certain frequency. So if people are on a certain frequency, then they're speaking for themselves. They're letting you know their position, because they're speaking for themselves. It's not somebody saying anything. They're saying this. But we want to set the stage before they go in on themselves.
All right, many of you may not be aware, but there's a growing scandal from within one of the most pernicious leftist globalist groups out there, the Southern Poverty Law Center, simply the SPLC. The SPLC is an organization that began back in 1971 as a civil rights group that campaigned to bankrupt the Ku Klux Klan. But since then, it's shifted to what Rich Lowry over at National Review calls a catch-all anti-hate group that's widened its definition of hate to basically include all conservatives, all nationalist, populist, and traditionalist groups. It's been a very successful business model, to say the least, largely because in weaponizing race and racism, the SPLC has been seen as an integral part of the success of the political left in shutting down their partisan opponents on the right. There was a time that if the SPLC designated you part of the hate group, that was enough to kill your career in politics or law or things like that. And so because they're so valuable to the left, they've been able to raise an astounding $50 million a year and build an endowment worth more than $250 million. Again, in the words of Lowry, the SPLC is basically a fundraising tool masquerading as a civil rights group. There's no question that they have certainly profited off their weaponization of race to an extraordinary degree. Among the conservative groups that have been labeled officially hate groups by the SPLC, we have the Family Research Council, we have the Alliance Defending Freedom. Remember, the Alliance Defending Freedom has won more Supreme Court cases than any other organization in this nation. And yet this thoroughly reputable organization is dismissed as a hate group by the SPLC. It's designated groups like the Center for Immigration Studies and the International Organization for the Family, who's putting on the Verona conference that I'll be speaking at later on this week. They literally make no distinction whatsoever between organizations that represent real, genuine political and cultural concerns, such as those who actually argue and win, keep in mind, win Supreme Court adjudicated cases. In other words, they are organizations that represent the interests that of citizens that are fully within the rule of law and Supreme Court recognized conception of justice. The SPLC can't distinguish between such law-abiding, indeed civil society honoring organizations on one hand and neo-Nazi slave owners on the other. And the SPLC is now infamously behind much of the deplatforming and censorship that's been going on in social media as an effort to silence conservatives. This is why the SPLC is such an incredibly pernicious organization.
No. There's a lot more. You have anything to add before we go on?
No, Grand Sheet. I just want to add on. I'm glad you set the foundation by playing that. I was going to ask you to play one of the videos, because there's numerous videos. It's not just the only video that was putting SPLC on blast like that, because there's plenty of people who have been complaining about this hate hate group, because that's what they are. SPLC is a hate group.
Yep.
That's what they do. Anything that has anything to do with going, if you try to do something right, they're labeling you as a hate group.
Yep. As soon as you're in the mindset of self-governance, as soon as you're in the mindset of handle your own affairs, we have these people trying to tell you that that is anti-government, and that is not the way that it's supposed to be. You're supposed to have documents from a foreign European corporation telling you what to do. Now, that was just to set the stage. You can go watch the rest. The deplatforming, Southern Poverty Law Center is collapsing.
And another thing, real quick, Ranchi, Islam.
Yeah, more.
Yeah, this too. It's using that foundation shows that anybody who's using that should know that, okay, if somebody's using SPLC as something to prove anything, they should be looking at that person. Like, why are you using that system? Why are you using SPLC if you know that what they're doing, that they're doing is to promote anything that's bad? Like, they want to put on blast, like, because during the interview, it said somebody had one more Supreme Court cases than anybody.
Yeah.
And they labeled them as a hate group. Like, how did you, like, I was like, oh, that's crazy. How can it, like, that's these are, people are using these websites or foundations or whatever to try to go against Moors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Moors that's doing it. So I wanted to add that in there. And that's the slavery, like your brother putting you back into slavery, trying to sell you out using SPLC to try to make you seem like you're not a Moor, saying well Moors is something wrong. That's another, like when they say, oh, Moors enslaved, whatever, it's still going on right now. Because the video that the Grand Chief's about to show is going to prove, like, okay, this is another, because he's a Moor, whoever. I'll let you just play the video.
These Moors that don't want to be Moors.
So to continue on, this is this is part 3 of Indians versus Moors. To continue on, they use this perceived immunity to justify refusing to pay taxes, buy auto insurance, register their vehicles, and to defraud banks and other lending institutions.
All right. Now, there's no such thing as a perceived immunity, because automatically taxes without representation is a fraud. If you didn't sign on to pay any tax, you shouldn't be paying them. And how come that's on you and not on the foreigner who's in your land? Indigenous, Aboriginal, Autochthonous guys. It's not perceived immunity. The argument is birthright, because this is our ancestral estate. This is not Turtle Island. This is an estate. Historically, it's called Moorish Empire or Moroccan Empire. And it's a fact that it extends from over there across the Atlantic to over here to across the Pacific over there. the Moroccan Empire.
Yep.
Buy auto insurance. If anybody that has a Moorish nationality card, Moorish paperwork, doesn't have that, says that they're a Moor and they're behind a wheel that they have auto insurance. 98% of the time, that's all rights reserved. 98% of the time, that's, even though it's in this name, know that I'm going to edit this contract that we have. Because under occupation, you might have to contract because you're under occupation. Don't get mad. It is what it is. Because you didn't do what Noble Ali left for you to do. Not to play black leader guys. Now you found out about Moors and you're rushing in head first. No. That's what Noble Ali called old business. So if you had auto insurance and then you found out that you're a Moor, that has nothing to do with auto insurance. And the two don't merge like that. But these people are putting whatever they're putting in their little unconstitutional, fraudulent ideas that they're sending out to have people confused about what Moorish nationality and birthrights is about. Bottom line, have them confused about what this is really about. Putting Moorish and auto insurance in the same sentence like they're relative things. Register their vehicles. If it's a vehicle, it would have to be registered. If I have a conveyance, you're not even talking about me. Who you talking about Moors register vehicles? Oh, they got some commercial activity that they're doing? Oh, yeah, sure, they might have a vehicle registered. They're doing some commercial activity. Why not? That's what registration's for. And reservation of rights and all that stuff, because you already know it's occupation. But you know, stop me from exercising.
Right.
Go around the elbow to get to the thumb. Defraud banks and other lending institutions, they're running the fraud.
Yep.
They're running the fraud. The banks and the other lending institutions are the ones that's running the fraud.
Right.
They're the ones that have no money. And they're playing around like they have debt and credit and whatever, and people could get line of credit and all this stuff. What's a line of credit? Show me that on the table. Put a line of credit there. Let me see what that is.
Yep.
And where's the debt part? Is there a line of debt? Where's that? And how long's that line? Because the line of credit line's short. So again, there is a sovereign nation That's Moorish. But there's no such thing as Moorish sovereigns. There is a sovereign nation. And if they're talking about nation, then they're agreeing that Moors have a nationality. So the immunity is not perceived. The immunity is because we are part of a nation. That if you don't have jurisdiction over that nation, you have to yield.
Yeah.
Real simple law. It's not really not an issue. What are they gonna do? The guy who is in the black community, they're gonna have their black guy agent to the black community. The guy in the Chinese community, they're gonna have their little Chinese guy agent to go do whatever. But we're a nation. And the federal, state, and locals are not authorities. They are foreign contractors. That's all. As soon as you give them the power of government, then they're going to tell you you're anti-government. And the anti-government that we're for is the anti-government that the governments are corporations pretending to be governments. If that's the governments you're talking about, then yeah, we're anti those. But there's no way that you can know that we're Moors and say that we're anti-government, because we're the founders of government. How are Moors anti-government when we're the sovereign nation? That you know we're the sovereign nation. And again, it's always going to be the one on your side. This is not we're talking to SPLC. They already know that they're a fraud. We're talking to these Aboriginal Indians, these Aboriginal Autochthonous, Turtle Islanders, want to claim that they're every single tribe, but they would never say that they're Moors. And then going to be using SPLC as a reference point to tell people they're not Moors. And then have clowns agreeing with them. Don't be one of these clowns. Recognize that it's all propaganda to get you away from the fact that we are all Moors.
Yep.
Go ahead, Moore.
That's just the power right there. Once we say that we Moors, it's all over. And the thing, like what he said about the taxes, how he wasn't going to go in on the taxes, like Moors not paying taxes, but he's supposed to be the Autochthonous guy, and if that's the case, because the people who Moors don't so-called pay taxes to will be foreigners. Autochthonous guy is saying Moors are wrong for doing that. Like he has an attitude that Moors don't want to pay foreigners. Like, oh, I don't want to talk about that, right? But you're the Autochthonous guy. Like, your mind shouldn't even be thinking that. You shouldn't even be wasting your time, since you're Autochthonous guy, even talking to Moors. You should be complaining to Europeans about why they're not paying taxes to you. Not why aren't Moors paying taxes to foreigners. Like, that's how you know, like, propaganda. They're playing games. They're not in it to help their people. They're in it for attention. Because he clearly is an idiot. He has no idea what he's talking about. He just buried himself by saying that comment. Because his aspect is supposed be as Autochthonous guy as foreigners should be paying him taxes. He shouldn't even be talking about Moors. He's Indian council guy. He should be talking about Europeans all day, every day, colonization all day, every day. He's talking about Moors, not paying taxes to foreigners.
Yeah.
Like what your concept, you shouldn't even have that in your mind. You should know that that's a game. Like that's not what's really supposed to be going on. You're the Autochthonous guy. Everybody should be paying you taxes. That should have been his first thing.
That should be where you're going. Yeah, that should be where he's going. But they're not going to go there, because this whole idea again that if they're not Moors and they're claiming that they're the Black Indian whoever, all right, fine. That means that all you dealt with was canoes and rafts. You didn't deal with boats. So because only thing you dealt with was canoes and rafts, you can't talk world. All they know is their little pocket called the mainland. They don't know about the ocean and 50-foot waves and stuff like that. They don't know about traversing over water. All they know is mainland. But when you check the history of the Moors, oh, we're everywhere.
Right.
Still today. Everywhere. Everywhere you go, someone knows that the Moors were there. There's something left there.
I'm glad you bring that up.
Go ahead, Moore.
It just seems like the same thing with black people. They don't go their history started in a slave ship, so no, there's no ancient nothing. They can't bring themselves back nowhere because their history started in a slave ship. The Indian people, they didn't exist till Columbus came over there and started calling them Indians. So no, you can't see no history that predates Columbus with an Indian traveling across the world, because the Indian, that's a concept Columbus came up with when he got here. Right. So no, if you check history, no. Before 1492, you never even going to hear of the word Indian. No. It's a 16th century word, India, anyway. It doesn't go past the year 16th, the 16th century. And it just bugs me out. I'm like, wow, that's right. It wouldn't. You're not going to see Indians traveling because, like you said, they had canoes. But even worse, y'all history don't start until Columbus came and named y'all Indians. So y'all not doing nothing until that happened. Because nobody, Indian, like we said, and we were taught, los indios. The godless ones, those without God. That's where the term came from.
These are who's talking.
So in English, it would be. It's the same thing. Like like when we look at black in its connotative meaning, when it says deadly, mourning, sinister, wicked. It's the same thing as Indian, los indios, the godless ones. It's the same thing.
Exactly.
So what you calling yourself a black Indian is like a double jeopardy.
Double.
It's like the double worse. Yeah. It's like death squared. That's what you just did. Like black Indian? What in the world? Are you serious?
Yeah, you have to get out the first get out before you get out the get out.
Right.
You're in the get out 2 times.
all of that's fraudulent. Gonna make it seem like Moors are wrong. I really can't, because that's when I really realized, like, once you played that, and I saw, like, why isn't he saying y'all should be paying us Indians taxes? Like, he should have said that immediately. Yeah. Like, I'd have been ripping about that. if that was if I was studying and that was the truth. It's not the truth. So his first concept is, oh, Moors, you should be paying European tax because this is the United States. He still thinks that. He's not Indian. He's black.
Still black.
He's still black.
Still black.
Even though they're saying some videos.
Even though they're saying indigenous, Aboriginal, Autochthonous, they're still black.
Still black. He's still black. Because that's not what this is about. You keep thinking because of some video you saw, because of some document you filled out, that's what's gonna make you be. No. That's not what that's about. It's you. It's you. You going back to your forefathers and foremothers, being in that state of mind. Always being not straddling the fence. Not I'm gonna be a Moor here, and then when
over here,
do what I want. Right. I'm black now. I'm black. Me and my boys, we going, or my girlfriends, we gonna go. No, you straddling the fence.
Yeah.
And that's what that's why I was like, and that's why a lot of them. Well, I mean, we burn that up a lot too. They don't want to be Moors because once you know you're Moor and you committed to being who you are, you can't play the games no more. Now you got to do something.
Yeah.
And that's not what they want to do.
Yeah, something.
They want to laugh and giggle, play with the birthright, think it's a game, and then when somebody, just demolishes everything that they say and prove that everything that they do is wrong and how they're a liar and everything, they just, and don't want to brush it off like you didn't just do that.
Yeah. And
continue on doing what they're doing. And then there's people listening to these people. That's the thing I don't get. I'm like, who's listening to these people? How come? Why are you getting 1,000 views? Because people don't like truth. They like lies. People don't like truth. They like lies. Because I could not. I don't understand. I don't understand or whatnot why so many of these platforms got thousands of views but can't win Moors. We got to be debating somebody or something like that to get views. Nobody's just here to, okay, I found some good Moors. Let me help these Moors do good. No. They're here because they want to see the gossip, the back and forth. That's not another thing. That's not what it's about neither. And that's why Europeans can keep doing what they're doing because we still want to play the game. Oh, I'm Indian, I'm black, I'm Kemet, I'm this. Nobody wants to just say they're more, and the game's over.
And it's over. End game.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's not the European got us. I mean, we under colonization, but the colonization is really this. We put the screen over ourselves because all we got to do is proclaim our nationality. All we gotta do is start saying we're Moors and agree upon that every step of the way. Every Moor that's a Moor, knowing that they're a Moor, just agree upon that. But they're not. I'm an Indian, and then the Moors prove that Indians come from Los Indios. They still make a video right after this class and say that they're Indians. Right after listening to this, they'll still go up there. Or now they're or Native American that you're saying that, we're Native. Or, because now they're trying to get away from Indian. I can hear you. We can hear the videos. It's not like we don't see what y'all doing to try to get the people because you're just trying to cause this unity with the Moors.
All about this unity. You know what I mean? We're trying to bring it together as one, as Moors, and they want to be everything else. Let's carry on.
Yeah, I mean, you reading it just like I'm reading it, y'all. Y'all reading it just like I'm reading it. Many Moor sovereigns also profit by selling bogus registration, licensing, and insurance documents on websites. Promoting Moor sovereign beliefs and doctrines. In several instances, this belief in immunity from legal authority has led some more sovereigns to initiate violent confrontations with law enforcement.
There's a lot more. Go ahead.
It's cause see, it goes right back to everything you said earlier. Okay, if you're an autochthonous guy, why are you because he's agreeing that everything SPLC is saying that that the so-called United States is the authority. They are the so-called legal, lawful makers. You know, he's agreeing to that because he's reading it, and like more are against that. My thing is, if you're the autochthonous guy, that even proves that whatever you're reading is fraud because you're the guy. He's supposed to be the guy, even if because you're the autochthonous guy. So wouldn't you be the government? Did you put this out? No, foreigners put this out, and he knows that. Foreigners are putting out these documentations about Moors, not Indian Council. Indian Council didn't say this. SPLC wrote this. Like, I can't believe it. And he's just sitting there reading it. Like, oh, they're United States, like, you know, they're the authority. I can't believe that, man. Because we are registered, because everything he's reading is colored. Like, that's why I can't really, okay, like when he's saying register, they don't believe in registration. Like, I know all those words mean, like belief, registration. And even if we did the registration, who's supposed to, are we going to go register our so-called cars with foreigners? Now we can go travel in Morocco because modern European guy said we can travel here. Like, this Morocco. This ain't India, so there's no Indians here. This ain't the godless land. So this ain't Los Indios. But what they do, the problem is they started thinking like the colonists. They started chopping it. That's the problem. Like right here, okay. It's a book called Becoming the Change. Let's Free the Mind by Maxim Dangle. Maxim Dangle. And in his book, right, he writes, it says Indian. An Indian is a term derived from Latin that came from the Vatican, from the Latin words Los Indios, and then translated to the English word Indian. Look at that. I'm going to say that one more time. Yeah. Indian. An Indian is a term derived from Latin that came from the Vatican. So Europeans named that. Pope, the European, the Vatican coined the term Indian from the Latin words Los Indios, and then translated to English, which is the English word Indian. The meaningful religions of the Vatican was for those who did not believe in their story they push, their God, and have a different way of life to the one they lived and live. It was mostly related to people living in tribes, and is a term in international law. So this is a law term. You calling yourself American Indian, in law, they know that it means Los Indios. They know that. So when this dude, Indian Council guy, and that's a law term. It says it right here, international law. As an example, it says it right here as an example, American Indian. This is why for this book, Indian is a term for all people who have lived and are living in a tribe not sanctioned and under any laws from countries. Okay. Then it says underneath it, programming. Programming is loosely used in the book as having the context of using a or multiple forms of brainwashing, installing information in someone's mind without it being questioned by themselves, constantly repeated until the individual can and will repeat it. That's the problem. They didn't even question nothing. And then when the time they went to go question it, because the more it brought it to the light, it's too late because they didn't repeat it in their mind so much they don't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to hear it. That's why that's another thing with the black pride and all that. They done said it so much, they never questioned that, hold on, black is a color. Wait a minute, black, no, that's really a color. They never even questioned it. But because they kept repeating it so much, it's stuck in their head. And by the time we went to go correct it, they so stuck in their minds, it's a wrap. It's already, they've been programmed.
They're programmed already. Yep.
It also says right underneath it, it says paper bulls. This is the same book, same page. Is a rule or set of rules set by Roman Catholic Church for its governance over others and land that they created and invented with no foundations besides their story of their God. This is all of this Indian. This is a term derived from Latin that came from the Vatican. Make it seem like Moors make this stuff up. You can get the book Los Indios. They got a book called Los Indios. When hold on, just give me 1 second. When the author says, this is my reason for writing this letter, which I've entitled Los Indios. Hold on, let me click on it. Okay. Why that title, Los Indios, literally translates to, quote, those without God, or the godless, which is how Columbus labeled the indigenous people. Look at that. I'm gonna say that again. The book is called Los Indios, and the author says, why that title? Los Indios literally translates to, quote, those without God, or the godless, which is how Columbus labeled the indigenous people.
This article that I have here is saying a more romanticized theory is that Columbus was so impressed by the physical spirit and nature of the Taino people he encountered in what is now known as Puerto Rico that he proclaimed they must have been made from the body of God, or du corpo indio. From indio comes the name Indian. Indian, a foreign word. But the word Indian was never spoken prior to colonization. It is a name that originated from foreigners. In Canada, it is quite frowned upon to use the name Indian in casual conversation. But we still have organizations with names like Manitoba Indian Education Association. So the Indian is known to be a fraud.
Yep.
Known to be a fraud.
Like it's on the Vatican. It's a Vatican term. There's no such thing as a black people. There's no such thing as American Indian and an Indian. None of that. It's just more.
Yep,
Like,
all of
we
it is
demolish all the words. Like, you can't be none of those words.
fraud. All of it is
Black,
fraud. Right?
it's just
Yeah.
more.
So, right? Yeah, exactly. Now this one is Louisiana history. The influence of Moors and Christians on cultural performances by slaves in the American diaspora is notorious in the case of Brazil. According to Camara Cascudo, Congo dances in Brazil, known as congadas, congaros, or Otos dos Congos, use a basic structure with a parade, meeting of the enemies, heated discussion, mock fight, and bowing of the defeated group, and a color combination: blue for Christians, red for pagans. That parallels that of the Moors and the Christians, but they usually perform an African variant of the battle whereby the Christian forces are led by the King of Congo. In fact, as Silva Lara argues, the embassies and parades of the kings and queens of Congo should be understood in connection with the performances that developed out of the victory over the Moors during the Reconquista. According to Marlise Meyer, the king of Congo transformed into an African variant of Charlemagne in the context of the merger of African and Carolingian elements in Congadas. Among the many variants of Congadas that developed in Brazil, there were some in which blacks dressed up like Native Americans. In a description of the Congadas dated from 1748, the dancers were said to wear the headdresses made of long plumes. And in 1843, a witness said a king election ceremony of a brotherhood composed by slaves with roots in Congo mentioned that the warriors or ambassadors dressed up in the style of Brazilian Indians. Because they already told you that what's happening or what's being played out is the battle between the Moors and the Christians. Know that the history of the Moors is there. Why is that history brought to Brazil? Why do they know about it? Why is Latin prominent there? You think it's because of some Spaniards? It's not because of Spaniards. Why Latin's over here? They came here and it was here already.
Right. That's right.
There's a couple more references in this book right here. This Louisiana book. All right, the similarities between Louisiana's Mardi Gras Indians and the Afro-Brazilians, syncretic variants of the Moors and Christians. Everybody knows what the connection is. The connection is that we are all Moors. That's all it is. We are all Moors.
Right.
That's the bottom line. The bottom line is we are all Moors. You can't not be that. and be everything else. You sound foolish.
Yeah, that's and to add on too. That's modern scholars who make it, who talk and write and say the Spanish, because they were conquered by the Moors, they bring that influence here to South America.
Right.
That's modern scholars who say that, because when Cortez came, they wasn't talking like that. They knew who they were dealing with. It wasn't, oh, they looked like Moors, or it's sort of kinda, and when Cortez got here, first thing he said was what? Those Moors. That's what he said. And the thing is too, if you do some history on Cortez, when he was raised in Andalus, his neighbor was a Moor. Had his own vineyard growing up, so in Moorish artifacts on his house, like if you do research on Cortez and him growing up, his neighbors was Moors. It wasn't like he didn't know where he was going. He knew exactly what it was, because he grew. That's like you living, growing up in your neighborhood and then going down the street, and then like they're like, oh, he influenced this. How? Everything is the same. Everybody's here. It's the same thing. It's the same. That's like we be like, oh, everybody's so-called hood is the same thing. Yeah, it's all the same.
Yeah.
This was all the same thing. Cortez literally down the street was a Moor from his house. That was his neighbor. So when he grew up with that, was raised next to that. So now modern scholars make it seem like Cortez, who was now when you see the scholars at Cortez time, when they speak of Cortez, Cortez was King Cortez or Emperor Cortez. Now, years later, they take it down to like he was a general or something like that. Nah. If you go get some old books, they used to refer to him as Emperor Cortez. You think he didn't know what he was talking about when he got here? Or because my thing is, when you read it a lot, it just looked like they were just here.
Yeah.
They came over here. It was just that stuff. This was just happening here. It was already happening right here.
Like, imagine that culture shock. You pull up and there's docks and all that. Like, organized.
They said Cortez, what was it? They felt the same foods being sold in the market here was being sold in Andalus over there. They call Spain. But the same stuff was being sold, the same foods. The markets were set up the same way, and it's not like, and again, the way Cortez is speaking of it, it's like as if he woke up in the same neighborhood at home. It wasn't nothing different, But the way scholars make it seem now, it was like they make it seem like, oh, he was referring to it, or like no, he wasn't referring to nothing.
Yeah, he was actually back home over here.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's like don't believe man is not no man is told. Go see what Cortez himself said. Don't go listen to Cortez said this. No, Cortez wrote down what he said, what he saw. You can go look it up. He wrote down what he saw. And he wasn't making similarities to Moors back home. He was talking to Moors when he was here.
Yeah. Before all the Indian and all that.
Right.
Do not even deal with any Indian or Aboriginal, Indigenous, and none of that. Moors, those Moors. Those Moors.
And another thing, I was reading, I don't want to get it wrong. Okay. St. James the Moor Slayer.
Yeah.
Right? St. James the Moor Slayer, linguistically,
Yo,
is,
are you watching the thing right now?
no, I'm not.
Yo, I just showed a book that was talking about St. James the Moor Slayer, just so you know.
I can't even see it. I'm not even looking at class. I'm not even, don't internet near me, nothing. That's crazy. That's crazy, man. Yo, because I'm glad I remember St. James the Moor Slayer linguistically here when the conquistadors were invade. It said when they would invade the natives, they would shout Santiago. Linguistically, Santiago is St. James the Moor Slayer. So every time you hear the conquistadors would shout Santiago, Santiago, it's in Latin. It means St. James the Moor Slayer. So they would shout that here, Santiago.
Yeah.
I was bugged out when I read that.
Evidence of Moors and Christians, whereby pagan Native Americans take over the role of the Moors, and whereby Montezuma replaces the Moorish king that has been found in Latin America since the 16th century. Yet, even in performances where the entire plot was adapted to local situation, those performing as pagan Native Americans still made occasional references to Moors, and Islamic symbols sometimes remained visible on their headwear and clothing. These Native American adaptations of Moors and Christians became particularly popular in Mexico. Among the many variants, Danza de la Conquista, Los Moros, Los Santiagos, Danza de la Plumas, some most notably that of the Matache, display strong indigenous characteristics using large headdresses permitted.
Oh yeah, even what's the name of the sombrero?
Yeah.
That's Moorish.
Yeah.
That's not Mexican. That's Moorish. And they have Moorish dances. Even the Moorish dance, they try to say that Spain, when they say that the Spaniards introduced the Moorish dance here because, because of the Moors conquering Al-Andalus. But they had found that the Aztecs, so-called Aztecs, which we know are the Olmecs, who are the Moors, were doing the Moorish dance before the Spaniards even came here. And that's just proof again that,
Yo,
it was just Moors already here.
hold on. Okay, so this is what I just put up now. This is what I just put up. Aztecs, Moors, and Christians. Festivals of Reconquista in Mexico and Spain. Max Harris. I have dealt more with the large-scale festivals than with the smaller dances because the early history of the tradition includes more accounts of one of the other. In this final chapter, I will return to modern Mesoamerica, where I will concentrate on two dances. Northern New Mexico's Danza de los Matachines and Oaxaca's Danza de la Pluma. Whatever the dance's uncertain relationship may be to European Matachines, Spanish dances of Moors and Christians, or pre-contact indigenous dances, both in their present form, belong to the broad Mesoamerican tradition of dances of reconquest.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, see? That's see what I mean? The evidence is there. You know, that's how you know they playing games. They're not even studying. They're just using the colonization stories that they was taught in school, trying to use it against Moors when Moors we study. Every time the Grand Sheik call me, text me, what you doing, Moor? I'm studying. Every time. Every time. Every time. Or I'm at the Joe, but something's being played, you know, so I can still hear.
Yeah.
Cause I gotta hear our history.
Yeah, you gotta get something in.
I was gonna send you another one. Y'all can YouTube this. Ancient Islamic cemeteries in Rhodes, Greece. Rhodes Island, where Greece used to be. Ancient Islamic cemeteries in Greece. Go ahead and look that up. Go ahead and look that up. You're gonna be stuck. Whenever they get time, you know what I mean? Please look that up.
Look that one up, boy. Say it one more time.
It's ancient Islamic cemeteries in Rhodes, or it's Rhodes.
Okay.
But it's like the capital is like Greece or something like that.
Oh yeah.
You see it?
No, hold on. I didn't even look for it yet. Was on YouTube? No, I don't want to do it because then these guys are snitching. I have to check first.
Oh, okay.
I have to look at it first and then see if then see how much we use it and shit.
It's Island of Rhodes, exploring a historic, neglected Muslim cemetery. It got 9,000 views. Nobody even seen it. But as soon as the Moors find out about this, they're gonna have a bunch of more views now. I'm talking about this man is walking in. You know the cemeteries that got the walk-in, the walk-in cemetery.
Right.
Man, they still got the curtains up, the Moorish architecture. You know, all the geometrical shapes, everything. The paintings, the paint is still in there. Everything, and I'm like, but they don't know whose cemetery he used to be. You know, some lady got the key to the castles, and I'm like, yo, what do you mean some lady has the key to the castle?
Yeah, I mean some lady. How come we're not talking to the lady right now?
Right. Bring the lady out. But he literally went inside them cemeteries, and they were showing. I was like, man, look at all the Moors. Moors started building up. When I checked the history, Moors started building, castles and stuff before we were about to invade Rome. So we started setting up shop on the borders. And in my head, I'm like, well, in modern times, they set up, camp, and you would think like tents and stuff like that, because, after the war is going to be over, they're going to leave. Like, we would set up castles before we invaded. That bugged me out reading that. I was like, why would we have time to set up a castle? Like, oh, we just know we gonna win this war. Like, this ain't gonna be no struggle or nothing. Just start building homes now. We're gonna go to war tomorrow. Oh, okay.
Let's build our home and then we'll go to war because it's already done.
It's already done. We won already.
That's crazy.
Because that alone is a war tactic. You showing up to a place where people ain't never seen your architecture that you just built. Like, I don't know if I want to fight that. I rather want to learn that. I don't want to destroy that.
What's it called again? Island of Rhodes?
Yeah, Island of Rhodes. Rhodes. Exploring a historic, neglected Muslim cemetery.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one, Gracie. Cause they make it seem like the Moors wasn't everywhere. They were everywhere. That's why I'm glad you bring up the fact that you're not going everywhere on a canoe.
Definitely not.
You can't circumnavigate the 7 seas on a canoe. Get the book Ancient Technology. They can look up androids. Android is an Arabic word. Android is an Arabic word. He been had the Android. Been had it. The reason why Moors didn't like the Android, it says it right in the book, Ancient Technology. They talk too much. I could not stop laughing at that.
The Android talk too much?
The Android talk too much. I said, what? They talk too much. Get the book, Ancient Technologies.
The hell's that supposed to mean?
Say that again?
What's that supposed to mean?
Yeah, exactly.
What you mean, man?
He just put quotes around it. Quote, they talk too much. I said, you can't just leave it like that. You know what that meant. Animation, all of that, the merry-go-round with the Arabian horses, that's all Moorish. That's not no go to a, carnival. That's Moorish. Those are Arabian horses. The whole merry-go-round, that comes from the Moors. But it wasn't, like, animation comes from the Moors. You can get once again, the book, Ancient Technology.
No, I was just looking online, and there's a Murad Rice Mosque in Rhodes, Greece.
Look at that.
Murad Reis.
Because we keep saying the Greeks were Etruscans.
Yeah.
Nah, they were Moors. That's why there's a Moorish cemetery in Greece. Because other than that, it would be like, are we going to go with the story that Moors were building castles before we went to war? Or are we going with the story that Moors were just already in Greece? And those castles was there when Moors got there. Because, again, when we look at Sealing Days literature, these Europeans didn't come to power until the 1800s. We struggling now. These Europeans wasn't doing nothing. 17, 16, 15, they wasn't doing nothing then.
Nothing.
I can't believe these people. But if you look at the comments too on that guy's video,
let me go there.
comments is crazy. Somebody called them s'mores. I'm like, yo, s'mores? Name calling? Like, where's the
scholarship?
Where's the scholarship?
Where's the scholarship?
We just showed you scholarship. The book called Los Indinos. Like, you can get in the other book telling you reference the Vatican. Indian comes from that. Like, you guys pull up SPLC.
SPLC was what they're repping. You know.
That's their reference point.
More than that, you're a funny guy. Yeah, you are a funny guy.
I put on there, Dr. Ben said we were calling ourselves Moors. You know what somebody put on there underneath that? Listen to this. Dr. Ben loves white folks. I said, yeah, like, what, like, see what I'm talking about?
Crazy.
Like, cause we always ask them too. Well, what scholar do you want us to use? Because we'll use your scholar against you and show that either Indian is not a nationality, or the thing that you call yourself is not a nationality, or we were calling ourselves Moors. Either way, any of their leaders all tell them that.
Either way, you lose.
They're either going to tell them whatever they calling themselves are not nationalities, or we were calling ourselves Moors. That's what they got. That's the only two things. It's the people who get upset and mad because Cujo cussed them out, and now they don't want to be Moors. Like, brother, it's your fault.
And you're still a Moor, even if you get cussed out. You're not gonna be a Moor because you got cussed out.
That doesn't even make sense. These people cuss you out all day, calling you black, whatever, black this, black that, black MFer, and you still be black right after that. Cujo cuss you out about being a Moor, you don't want to be a Moor now. But every day, all your life, you've been called black, you black, such and such, but you don't be like, oh, I don't want to be black because they cuss me out about being black all the time. You don't say that for that.
Never go there. We just want to plug their friends one more time, who they keep getting stuff from, just to put it in perspective. You know, we laid the foundation, and now we're gonna put the top on the casket, because we are all Moors. Kill all the labels. Moor is not our label. Moor is not a tag. Moor is not a brand. Moor is a birthright.
You know anything about the sexual harassment?
Look, I'm not joking. I'm asking you to step off, and if you don't, I'll call the cops. I mean it.
I'm a journalist. I'm asking questions. So nothing to say. 2 investigations were to come out. Nothing happened.
The left's premier racism and sexism watchdog has a racism and sexism problem, and they don't like being asked about it. Former staffers at the Southern Poverty Law Center say it's been ripping off its donors and sexually harassing and racially discriminating against employees for years.
$500 million so-called charity that has systematic racial and sexist discrimination problems. And at the same time, it's simply using that money to target its political opponent.
And now, that wouldn't be big news if it weren't for the fact that the world's biggest tech companies still use the SPLC's standards for censoring people. I'm Anders Hagstrom, and these are the facts. The SPLC is the left's authority on hate groups. They accuse political opponents of racism or homophobia or other bigotry and get millions in donations because of it. The Daily Caller broke last year that Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, and Google all looked to the SPLC to define what is acceptable speech. And it's widely known that outlets like CNN and the Washington Post cite them with no thoughts. But what is unacceptable to them? Anything to the right of Hillary Clinton.
Why aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask?
They called the Family Research Council a hate group for believing in traditional marriage, and then a gunman stormed the Family Research Council's headquarters in 2012. In fact, the SPLC will go after beliefs as mainstream as opposing illegal immigration or believing that the biological differences between men and women are unchangeable. And now, the SPLC has fired its co-founder and its president for the very things they were supposedly policing: racial racial discrimination, and sexual harassment. And after all this, Twitter is the only one that has cut off the organization. That means people using Facebook, Amazon, Google, and subsequently YouTube are all still subject to the same organization that caused Twitter to shadow ban conservatives and YouTube to outright ban them. Facebook told us that they saw the SPLC as an unbiased source. Unfortunately, it's anything but. In fact, Twitter is the only one that has cut off the organization. That means people using Facebook, Amazon, Google, and subsequently YouTube are all still subject to the same organization that caused Twitter to shadow ban conservatives and YouTube to outright ban them. Facebook told us that they saw...
Yeah.
Twitter even banned them.
Banned them.
Twitter banned SPLC. Said, nah, they can't come over here with that fraudulent stuff anymore. They're banned. Like, this is what Autochthonous guy is using.
The ban
to go against the Moors.
Yeah. These are your boys, don't forget. These are your boys. Your Autochthonous, Aboriginal, Indigenous, Aboriginal Indians that aren't Moors.
Yep, but love to straddle the fence.
The SPLC as an unbiased source. Unfortunately, it's anything but. In fact, using the SPLC to police conservatives is like letting the Heritage Foundation write policy for Democrats. And now let's go to some of your comments from last week's video about the wage gap. Ronald Brooks.
Oh, SPLC is a fraud. Watch people who use them.
Yep.
Watch people who use them. We just want to close out with a post from December 1st, 2014. MHHS Eyes Wide Open. Honors to the mothers. All the mothers out there, Islam. You are more by birth and bloodline, not by membership or not membership. We have received emails and concerns regarding people who say one cannot be a Moor unless they come through a temple as a member. We trust to put to bed in one paragraph as it is a most absurd statement which proves a desire to own and or control others and proves the existence of mental slavery if another believes it and acts upon it as truth. You are born a Moor as a matter of bloodline, lineage, and heritage, thus birthrights, not temple rights. Simple. Prophet Noble Drew Ali himself was a Moor prior to establishing a temple. So such statements show and prove themselves if you would get to thinking and studying, which really are the same thing in many ways. If these people are talking about an agreement made after he left the scene, then what would that be, as his instructions were clear for us to all live in peace and not be molested? Until they enforce the American National Constitution of 1791 for nationals, as instructed, then they have not done what was directed of them. Therefore, there is no need to make up anything new in an effort to bring unity and peace. The agreement has already been made. Most of us know that most of the Moors, unfortunately and sadly, do not enforce the American National Constitution of 1791 for nationals. They don't know the difference between a state's constitution, their membership bylaws and constitution, and the national constitution. Until they get to knowing and acting upon that, anything else would be treason on their part, even as a Moor. We recognize fraud, and so ought you. Even more sinister and unveiling is that those who say these things are probably working with the foreigners through their corporate county. You ought not to be registering, you ought not to be declaring and proclaiming as instructed. You ought not be registering, you ought to be declaring and proclaiming as instructed by Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Why else would they say something like that? Or
They just have no ability to be fearless, independent, and upright Moors, of which they would have to be lacking those qualities to even make a statement like that or an agreement like that with foreigners to keep the Aboriginal and indigenous natives, Moors, under their jurisdiction. So be careful, Moors. Some of your own will put you back into slavery. The last reason for these statements and actions of so-called leaders is that they prove lack of study, as they were instructed and obligated to do. Many of them think you are a USA citizen, and that is absolute proof of one of all of the above reasons. Be sure to read the magistrate and subject relationship, chapter 29. The sheiks are chosen by you, the member, and considering a favorite amongst his equals, which you, the member. This is an election process from the very first line of that chapter. Be sure to have read chapter 28 before you decide to act upon master-servant relationship with anyone. Courtesy of RV Bay Publications. Islam Moors. Islam Moors.
Islam more.
You have any
He does try
close
to
out?
make it seem like.
Word more.
No, I was just saying because he does try to make it seem like in the video that being the Moor started when Noble Drew Ali started the Moor Science Temple.
Yeah.
Or the old Canaanite Temple.
Loser.
He tried to make it seem like that's when the Moors existed. Like that's fraud.
Yeah, big time.
That's fraud. And there's some temple Moors who try to play that same position too. Like,
yeah.
You know, like when they play the position, oh, if you're not in the temple, you're not a Moor. Like
right.
the temples. So what was Noble Drew Ali? Like the mother said.
Exactly.
In order for the temple to be Moorish, a Moor had to set it up.
They wanted a black temple. That's what they wanted.
Exactly. 501c3.
They just wanted a black temple. Shit. Islam more. You have any closing out words of
Islam to all the Moors in the chat. Islam to all the Dezor Moors. Give thanks to you, Grand Sheik, for your platform. You know, give honors to the Prophet too, Noble Drew Ali. Give honors to the Prophet.
Supreme honors to the Prophet. Islam to all the Moors worldwide. And all the Moors that know the truth about their nationality and birthrights. Peace and love to all the Moors. Give thanks for your time and your attention, and don't forget to spread the word. Canaanland Moors 2, where we'll be at for right now. Islam Moors.